again, the questions that we would ask, as well as technology. I know some of you might not know the programming and terms. I'm going to talk a little bit about terms. So one of the questions I tend to ask early on in a project is, where is it going to be and how is it going to be programmed? Is it using WordPress? Or are we using some dynamic database connections? That might be some questions, because that might drive the way that you design something, right? So we'll talk a little bit about technology, some things, words you might not know. That's okay. We'll look at Wikipedia. Hey, Wikipedia's got everything on there, right? Hopefully everything's true on there. Probably not, but that's okay. So let's first go to oops, whatever. There. Let's go to Canvas for a moment. So last class we watched the native app versus web app, right? And so I think that sort of leads by the technology discussion, right? It's you early on, and the other problem that you're gonna run into is people don't know, right? They know that they need something, right? Oh, I need a website, or I need to put this product online. This product needs to be online. Well, you have to kind of maybe be should it be a web app? Does it need to be an app in the App Store? Could it be just on a website? You as a designer can, or whatever team you're on or whatever, can help drive that and have that vision for them. What is easier? What is easier to make? What is cost effective? I mean, you might not know that. That's okay. I mean, it takes time, but those are questions that you can ask. That's what my thing is. That's the question that you would ask. You might not know the answer, but you can ask that question, because saving money is important to companies, right? And then the other problem you'll run into is there's a lot of people out there that think they know everything, and they think they're doing the right thing, but they're really maybe not. Just like, let me pause my video here for a moment. So, let's just talk a little bit about, the questions you can ask. So this is what I want you to do for next week. I want you to come up here and show us what you've come up with, right? You might not have all the answers right now, but again, next, it says November 1st is next Thursday, right? Okay, what do I want you to come up here with? Well, I want you to write an overview. You saw some of the sample overviews from the previous proposals, right? Just write a paragraph of what your project is. What is the product and why? I use the word product because the website is a product, app is a product. Think of it as a product. It's something. I know it's not physical. I think that's the biggest challenge we have is, when we started going into this digital realm and the web realm, we think of a product as something you can hold in your hand, but it is a product. Okay? And what are the goals? And create a list of features that your site would have. Probably put a list in the overview. No, I just wrote that. I don't know why I wrote that there. I want a paragraph, though, of what your project is and why it's here. Okay? Read some of the overviews from the other ones. And then, again, the competitive site analysis. So you take some screen grabs. We talked about that already. There we go. Remember, we talked about competitive analysis last class. Here's some reading that you could do. Looking at competitor websites, maybe what is working, what is they're lacking, right? What is lacking? I think that's the more important. What is the problem my product's going to solve compared to what isn't there, right? My favorite video by far is Nancy Duarte is her name, and she is she's a presentation designer, and she has a presentation company here, and she used to be in San Jose. In fact, back in the late 90s, early 2000, she emailed me looking for interns. She does PowerPoint presentations, basically PowerPoint presentation designer is what she is. But she has this presentation where she says, look at your competition and see, this is what the competition is, and if you buy or you work with us, it will be here, you know. And she says, try and make that as big as possible, right? So you can say, hey, look at these competitors. They're missing this, they're missing that. This is what we'll solve. This is why it'll be great. And her context, of course, was the iPhone. In her presentation, she talks about the iPhone and how Steve Jobs, that's how he was the great presenter. Right? The great presenter was Steve Jobs. Because, you know, he would say, well, look at this sucky competition. You know, look at the BlackBerry. Look how crappy this phone is. Look at my phone. You know, it's here. It's incredible. And he did a really good job doing that. So if you haven't seen that video, I love that video. Just go to YouTube. I show it to my CIS class. And when I start teaching them PowerPoint. Nancy, how do you spell Nancy? I can't spell today. Let's see why. Is it Nancy? Is that Nancy? Here, this one. D-A, there it is. This one right here. Oh, what a great. But my whole point here is that you should be, you know, analyzing what is there and what could be. That's what I'm trying to say. And then, of course, take your sample images. I showed you how to take screen grabs, right? I want to see some samples up here. And then the last one is this one. You should have a list of questions. Now, these questions might not relate necessarily to your specific product. They're just general questions. But I think, you know, the questions are not necessarily the questions you're asking a client, right? You might not even have a client. Maybe this is a new product. You don't have a client. Maybe whatever. But they might be questions that you think need to be answered in your project, right? Questions you ask yourself. That's what I'm trying to say. It could be questions you ask yourself. Or the questions that you think you're answering. So this is the reading here. Essential questions to ask when starting a UX design project. Okay, and this is just kind of general. You can go in a little bit more detail, but these are questions that you can ask. Starting your design project can be overwhelming. There's so many different ways to understand requirements, gather information, and communicate with different stakeholders when working on it. And so when they say stakeholders, there's people that are involved in your project, right? Most often, different designers are tasked with onboarding before starting a project. This is an opportunity for designers to ask questions to further understand where the project is headed. So I'm not going to read the whole thing to you. But of course, the first one, of course, is a UX design question. You know, who are we designing this for? Right? I think this was a good one. What are their behaviors? That's where the technology, what I was kind of talking about technology before. Is it a website? Is it people sitting in front of the computer? Are they clicking on the mouse with a keyboard? Or are they touching with the phone like this? And that lends itself to interface design. Are they swiping, right? You don't really swipe on this. Right? So, you know, behavior. Age group is always a good one. And so next week, as well, we're going to be talking about what's called a persona, where you come up with an idea of what your user is and how to use the product. You don't have to do that today, but that's what we're going to start talking about as far as UX design. So, you know, these questions lend itself to that. What are their needs and why? What are their goals? Are they purchasing something? In fact, I think goals is probably the thing that should drive it. You know, what is the user trying to get out of this? Are they gathering information? Are they buying something? Is the main goal for them to click the purchase button? Amazon is, right? That's why they one-click. Remember the one-click thing on Amazon? That was quite easy. They kind of turned it on automatically one time. You know, I think I signed up for Amazon one time, and they put this one-click thing in there, and I'm like going around. I'm click on a product, and you know, I'm looking at it, and all of a sudden I actually bought it. I'm like, what is this one click? I just clicked on it. You know what I mean? And they do make that mistake before on Amazon. You got to go turn that one-click thing off. Whoosh. I mean, literally, they have this one-click thing on their thing, and if you click on the product, and I thought I was just clicking on reading it, you know, but for somehow it showed up. I'm like, why does the product show up? So be careful to one-click. But, you know, what are the goals? I think it's the important thing. You know, you know, a lot of it might not be purchasing because we're not all doing that, but it might be a service that you're offering. Are you contacting? what is the main goal? To read information and learn, right? Maybe it's a diet site. You want to learn about diet stuff. Maybe it's an information site on something that's important. Maybe it's a nonprofit. Most nonprofits are not selling something, but they're trying to teach you something. Maybe you're trying to teach something. So these are questions that I want you to list. You don't have to list all of them, but you should say, hey, this question is important to my project, right? That's all I'm looking for. You can copy and paste from this website if you want. I don't really care, but I want questions listed next week on November 1st that sort of says, hey, these are questions that are important to my product. What are the problems that we're trying to solve? I like this one. What happens if we don't solve the problem? What are the main pain points? Pain points is a term that we use in UX design that describes where the user gets frustrated, right? I don't know where to click. I know I want to buy this, but I don't know how to do it. Or I know I need to read this, but I can't open it in PDF. I got a lot of students that struggle with PDFs or watching videos. I put videos on YouTube, or not YouTube, I meant on that are on in Flash, and I link to them. And the problem is students are using their phone, right? They're using their phone with Canvas on it, right? And so I have assigned, not in your class, but in my computer science class. And so some of the instructional videos are in Flash, right? Flash video. And I get emails from students. I can't watch the Flash video. I can't do the assignment. They're using their phone, which is not compatible with maybe Flash and stuff like that. There's a pain point right there. My solution is to either go to a computer. I send them back a message. Well, maybe you should try a different browser too. Because you start using the default stuff that's on here, right? But that's a pain point of what I'm trying to say. Is when a user can't get what they want, they're frustrated. Frustration is what your whole goal is. I talked to Michaela yesterday, and I'm sorry, I think I was trying at the very beginning of the semester to try and show you the app for my leak alert. Remember I talked about that at the very beginning? I was going to have you guys do it. I just can't have you do it because it's not quite ready yet, but she's almost done. And so hopefully she'll get done. And the person I'm talking about is the one who's kind of making it, in charge of it and stuff like that. Hopefully, she's going to come next week for a meeting that I have, or 2 weeks from now. But hopefully maybe we can get her to come in and before the semester's over so she can show you the app. It's in test flight still. Test flight is the testing area for Apple. The thing. I think the Apple version is going well. I think the Android one is a little bit of a sticking point. I don't know. Somehow it's not complete. But my point is that it would be good for you to test it and find the pain points. Because I think that's what she is, that's the main goal is, to make it seamlessly enter. And you think it's so simple. I think the biggest problem is that we think things are so simple, but they're not. People get confused very easily. The Jeff Johnson, did you watch the Jeff Johnson? Anybody watch the Jeff Johnson video? Nobody watched that video. You're missing out, whatever. The Jeff Johnson video, he really talks about that and how people can be confused so easily. That's his whole point of his whole video, is that people get confused very easily. And if you haven't watched that video, again, it's here. I linked it up. I thought it was a really good video. He talks about how people get confused. It was last week. You really should watch that video. Where is it? This one. Jeff Johnson, Designing with the Mind in Mind. I love that video. He really talks about how, and the reason why the video is good is because he talks about how people get confused very easily. And how we think we can make, this is so simple, we could just make it like this, and you know what I mean? But no, there's cognitive brain things. That's why it's called mind in mind. Your brain thinks a certain way. So if you haven't watched that video, I highly recommend it. That's why I have a video discussion. You're supposed to watch this one and write something. I'll make you do it for points. How about that? Okay. Serious. If you haven't watched it, this one was a good one. Okay. Designing with the mind in mind. You know, people get confused very easily. So, you know, let's continue. Why are we solving this problem? I think it's another good one. Is to make money. Is to help people. I think a lot of us, you know, with the labeling one, right? We're here to help people, right? You're not in it for maybe, you could write in some money. We were going to talk a little bit about that as well today as far as technology-wise. But, you know, why are we making this project? What are we trying to solve? Business results. Maybe it's to be bought by Google, right? Many startups, you know, their goal is not necessarily to start a great product and do that. Theirs is to make a great product and be bought by one of these giant corporations, right? I mean, I think VCs, that's their main goal, right? I'm going to fund you, you know, $50 million, but you better be bought by Google by next year. I mean, that's a main goal. Hey, that is a goal right there. The how is maybe technical. And you can include some of that in there as well. What I mean by technical is that, you know, how are the people going to get the information, or how they're going to submit it maybe as well, right? Maybe it's the social media. They're connecting. Am I connecting with other people? What does success look like? Quantitative. Qualitative. Our goal is to get 50,000 users within the first 2 months. Could be a goal. What are the constraints? A lot of it has to do with probably money, budget. I don't know. Are they finding people to help? It's really hard to find qualified people to help you in any business. That's why there's you know, LinkedIn and Indeed and all those recruiters, right? Recruiters make tons of money, you know, because they're there to try and find professionals. I think, you know, that is. What is the back end, front end, retrieve information from the back end? You know, maybe there's a database. We're going to talk about databases and data connection right now in about 3 minutes. As soon as I'm done here, we're going into technology. Okay? So thinking about that. Again, I want you to just list questions. You're not giving me the answer. You're just giving the question. Next. You're not answering these questions. You're looking at them, but in your brain you're answering them. And in the future, and you include that into maybe later on in your project or something, but maybe these are questions that help you write your overview. All right? So what I'm looking for next week is just to give me a list. Which one of these relates to your project, I guess is what my whole point is here. Not all of these are going to relate to what you're doing. And so there's some more here. How are we going to differentiate ourselves? What makes our product unique? Stand out. There's a whole bunch of national park apps out there. Remember last semester we were doing national park stuff. I know I like doing the national park stuff because it's something you've all been to. And I'm sorry that we do that in class, but we've all been to a national park. And I like the design scheme that they follow in there, and then so on. So that's why I kind of did that in the past couple classes, national parks. But there's a lot of, and the whole purpose and what my whole point here is that there's a lot of other people out there making them. So what makes ours unique? That might be a good question. What makes yours stand out? Who will be involved? Stakeholders we'll be working with. And keep asking questions to clarify, and questions never stop. I mean, if you remember the UX video from the first week, right? The UX video from the first week was all about, you know, at the very end of the video, he says, you know, if you like asking questions, UX design might be right for you. You remember that? The video? The video at the very beginning, the guy was writing on the board, and the camera zoomed out and it said UX on the whiteboard. His last thing he said in the whole video, the last thing he says is, if you like asking questions, UX design might be right for you. That's what he said. And that's sort of what, you're asking questions. This is, it's all about, thinking about how people use things. Okay, let's get into technology. So you know what to do for next week? Just type all that stuff up in Word or InDesign or whatever, PowerPoint. But I want to see images on the screen, I want to see your overview, and I want to see your list of words. And sample things. Next Thursday. I'll bring some guests in to analyze. You want me to bring a guest in? So you do it not just for me, for a guest. Maybe bring the dean in. How about that? Make Jean come early. How about that? Make Jean come early so she can look at what you've done. I think it's good to have other people see what you're doing, is what my whole point is. They'll ask you questions that I don't ask you, right? So I'll see if Jean come early too. You should think of this as a very important part of your whole design process. Having a plan. Then you can go right into making some wireframes, go into making comps, go into making personas. Once you have things planned, you can then move on. Let's talk about technology for the rest of the class right now, and then we'll do a real quick sketch talk, and then we'll go home and pass out because I don't feel well right now. So I ain't going to stay today. If you want to talk, see me next week. Pistachios I ate and made me sick. I think it was pistachios. Could have been shrimp too. Shrimp and pistachios, not a good combination. I don't know what made me sick, but I was in bed yesterday pretty much all day. But we're moving on. Okay, let's talk about technology. It depends upon, what you're kind of planning for. Apps or websites. Backend data is a big technological hurdle, we'll say, that you have to kind of overcome. You might not necessarily know exactly, but you should understand some of the terms and the words and things like that. So we were talking about questions and how to be, what are business goals were some of the questions in there. Let's just talk about apps for just a moment. In app design, you have three ways of kind of making money or business goals in an app. Of course, most apps do what they call in-app purchase, where you build an app, right? I make an app and I put it on the App Store for free. And you can download my app. But if you want to unlock certain areas of it, you have to, upgrade to the premium version, right? You've probably seen that before. Or you can buy certain features in our app. Like games, they usually, you have to buy skins or something to make it more powerful in a game, right? That's how, Fortnite works, right? My son's like, oh, that's the best free game ever. Yeah, but you have to buy things to make you, be better at the game, right? So, most, Apple in-app purchases. There's info on that as well. Of course, another way that you can make money off an app is sell it for money. A lot of, professional apps are, $20, $30, $40, $50. Some are $10. Some might even use a little bit of, hey, pay us a little bit and in-app purchase. Google Play is the same way. You can do the same thing with Google Play. If you don't know Google Play, you got the whole Google Play Store. Again, you can do research here. I was thinking about this morning as well, is how to, make an app that is both Android and Apple kind of look. In my brain, I was trying to think of how to merge material design with kind of the Apple look, because it's so much different. It's hard to, I would love to be able to make an app that looks kind of like it should be on the Google, but it also looks like it should be on the Apple, and it seems hard. I just don't know, because Google has these color schemes. Because I was thinking, how am I going to talk about color with you, right? In an app, color in the app, and things like that. And it's just like material design has these really solid, thick, saturated colors that Apple doesn't use, right? Apple uses more white, earthy kind of, not this. And so how do I bridge the gap between this Android-looking thing and the Apple thing, I don't know if there's a way of doing that. It was just an idea that I had. But again, a lot of these apps you see here are a little bit of both. You pay, here's free games, right? Candy Crush, we all love Candy Crush. Offers in-app purchases, right there, right? That might be something you include in your project. Could be a goal. I used to have students at the end of their proposal for this class do a marketing page. How is this going to be marketed, or how is it going to business kind of things. And so that could be something that you think about up front. This is something that you talk about with your client ahead of time, right? If somebody come to me and say, hey, I want you to make an app, or somebody comes to you and says, hey, I want you to make a website, part of the goal is, are you going to want money out of this? People want to make an app so they can, make money. So this is what I'm talking about. And technology-wise, in-app purchases are very popular. Free to use with a pay thing. Woo! And think how much money these people made on Candy Crush, right? Who has Candy Crush? You guys don't have Candy Crush? Oh, okay, you gotta have Candy Crush. And then again, I think the other challenge is upgrading. The nice thing about apps nowadays is that Apple kind of when you make an app and you put it in the App Store and then you upgrade the app, you don't necessarily have to go and tell your customer, right? Apple's going to do that for you, which is, I think, quite a good thing, right? You just get that little message on your phone that says, hey, you need to update, right, from the Apple Store, right? It's not one app telling you. It's Apple telling you, hey, there's a new version. I think that's a kind of a technological thing as well. So, I don't know, app, probably the biggest challenge is a lot of the ways that you would connect technology to an app is the same way you would connect technology to a website. In fact, the back-end ways that you do that are very similar. Okay, so if I was going to make, let's say, a database that has my data in it for my app or for my website, I would do it very similar. I would build the app in the cloud or build a database in the cloud somewhere, either using, right now we use at Zircon we use the Amazon one. What's it called? The Amazon, what am I trying to say? There's a term for it. Amazon Cloud, AWS. Amazon Web Services. That's what I'm looking for. Yes. So I would build that for an app as well as for a website, right? You build it in the cloud up there and then connect it to your device. You can either connect it to your app or you can connect it to your web page. And so again, most companies use that. Here at West Valley, we use it as well. What do you think when you are connecting to the portal, right? And you're connecting to Canvas, right? Where is that data at? It's at Amazon, to believe it, if you want to believe that. Yes, it is. West Valley Canvas uses Amazon Web Services. I'm not sure about the portal, but I believe Canvas is all on Amazon. So if you don't know what that is, you probably should know what it is. What is it? Amazon AWS, Amazon Web Services, right? Is that what I'm talking about? And so I highly recommend learning a little bit about what this is and how people use it, because most companies in the world today use something like this. Google has their own as well. Google is good as well, and what I mean by good is that the advantage of maybe Google as well as Amazon, both of them, is that they built an infrastructure around the world, right? You build a database. There's data in China, or maybe not China, probably not there, but in Asia, there'll be part of your data there. In Europe, and they'll take your data and mirror it all around the world so that people don't have to keep coming to the United States to get your data, right? So that's why you sign up for things like Amazon, or you sign up for big companies like Google. Which one's more cost effective? Well, it depends, and they're scalable. Depending upon, you just need a little bit of database. Sure, well, you can build your little bit of database and pay, I don't know, $200 a month or whatever. Or it'll scale all the way up, and they'll scale with you. The more it scales, the more money you pay. Hey, the more customers you get, then hey, you might pay a little more. I looked at both of them as far as pricing wise. They're both about the same, I would say, Google as well as Amazon Web Services. Google claims that their network is better than Amazon. At least that's what they claim. I don't know about that. I don't think none of them really know, to tell you the truth. And of course, you could always go with a very high-end one like IBM is the same way, right? IBM is the same as well as Oracle. Oracle's just evil and horrible. What this is really for, as far as Amazon Web Services as well as Google, is they're for small business, right? I can sign up for this. Anybody can sign up for this. Oracle, IBM, they're not going to talk to you unless you're, a big corporation. So, as far as small database-driven, Amazon Web Services and that. So as far as technology-wise, building the back end is something that is possible. They have everything for you for connecting to building and so on. Yeah. Oh, here's pricing. Let's see. Pay as you go. And so on. So it was a big I think business decision that they went into this early on in the cloud computing idea. Other technologies that you should understand. Let's just go to Wikipedia. Of course, probably the greatest thing that ever happened to computers and the web is, of course, JavaScript. And JavaScript was invented by Sun Microsystem, or not Sun Microsystem, by Java was invented by Sun, but by a Netscape. And in fact, I remember when JavaScript first came out, like 97, 96, 97. The reason why they called it JavaScript was they were trying to piggyback upon the term Java, because Java was just coming out from Sun, and they said, "Oh, we're going to make a," so the JavaScript came out, and it was the, it was the programming that you could do in a browser, right? That was the whole purpose of it, was to do programming in a browser so that people can do dynamic things in the browser, right? You want to do dynamic things in the browser. JavaScript came out, allowed you to do dynamic things. Make menus. Pull-down menus. I remember the early days of JavaScript. Oh, I can make a pull-down menu. You program it, and pull-down menu was there. You're like, oh, wow, crazy, right? So JavaScript, 1995. Look at that. Yeah. And JavaScript was one of the 3 core technologies. And the beauty of it was, again, is that you could run programs in the browser, okay? The downfall is it was kind of limiting because you were using the browser and it didn't really have a lot of, the programming of a real object-oriented programming language that was compiled like C++ or Java and something like that. So, it was great, but it had some limitations. But then they
they figured, well, we can start taking that and developing it into other technologies, right? And that's what we all have today. That's why we have all these server-side scripting languages. Oh yeah, Netscape. In fact, I went to Netscape headquarters. Did I tell you that story? 1997. It was like going to Netscape headquarters. Like, oh my gosh, I'm going to Netscape. And I got a picture of me with Mozilla. You know, Mozilla the dinosaur. Netscape's mascot was a dinosaur. Yeah. But again, the server-side JavaScript has been around, and that's pretty much what we do with most of our data today. We're using some kind of JavaScript to bring a framework and libraries to your website, right? You connect all your data using some kind of JavaScript, depending upon what version of it. Ajax, of course, is probably, you know, probably one of the more important technologies that came out. You know, Ajax is asynchronous JavaScript and XML. And so XML is the language that you can build data in very easily. It's a Word document, you know, it's not even a database. It could be just a Word document. Or it could be something that connects your database to your website. And so understanding some of it, and Ajax is something that you deal with all the time, right? You go to Google and you type in one letter and boom, it starts giving you suggestions, right? That's probably the most easy concept to understand. You hit a letter, boom, a word comes up. Why is that happening? Well, your browser is talking to Google back and forth constantly. Asynchronous. Every key, every button you click sends data to Google or sends data somewhere, and then that data is retrieved by something and sent back to whoever the user is. That's what that is. And of course, in practice, modern implementation commonly uses JSON instead of XML, which is this is sort of the way that your JavaScript connects to your database. This is the language. Right? So most websites are using some kind of form of JSON. JavaScript object notation is an open standard file format that uses human-readable text to transmit data objects consisting of attribute value pairs and array data types or any other serializable value. Is very common data from format used for asynchronous browser-server communications, including replacement for XML and some Ajax-style systems. Okay, so, you know, most, and these are just versions, right? So as far as JavaScript, you know, there's a variety of different versions of it as well. JSON and somewhat. And then most of the latest technologies are based upon that, right? So if we go to our Wikipedia and we type in our Ruby on Rails, you might have heard that. You know. And this is what Facebook uses, right? This is the Facebook technology. Is a server-side web application framework written in Ruby under the MIT license. Rails is a model view controller framework. And when we talk about, you know, a lot of when we do web development, or when we're doing app design, right? Swift and Xcode is model view controller, and that's sort of the basis of it right there. Where you have, and they have a little chart here. Somewhere they had a chart, I thought. And so, we can click on it and get a chart. So again, the model view controller is basically you have a user, the user does something, the back end goes and changes the content, and then the content is displayed to the user. Right? So there's this, and you know, kind of flow here. So when you build something, you're building it in a certain way. The controller is the interface elements you put on the screen. When you put a button on the screen in Xcode, right? That button is connected to something in Xcode. What is it connected to? Well, it depends on what you want the button to do. You want the button to go to a new screen, right? Okay, well that is the model. And then the view is updated. New screen, right? Controller, button, click, changes the
the code and everything, and then the viewer sees it. It's sort of why is it like this? Well, this has pre-made libraries in it, right? Pre-made stuff that's built into there. Ruby on Rails is the same way, where there's pre-made code there for you. Pre-made. You don't write all the code. You just put the button on the screen there. You tell the button to do something. All that back-end stuff is being driven somewhere else. Right? You don't write any of that stuff. Nobody writes anything anymore. It's the beauty of what we do now in UX design, right? Or interface design. I can put buttons on the screen. I can put text on the screen. I can put a video controller on the screen. I don't have to program any of that stuff. It's already pre-programmed. I just need to tell it what to do, right? So how that's done is, of course, though, all that is connected to the back end. Remember the back end with the JSON and the Amazon, AWS.
So that's the main way of, and if you don't know what the Ruby on Rails, this is again mostly what Facebook uses. So again, there's some web standards, and the reason why I'm saying that is these are things you should just think about as far as, when you are talking to a client, how are you going to build this? Is it going to work? Are you using free stuff? Are you going to use pay stuff? There's a whole bunch of different versions of all these things. The way things work are pretty much similar. It's just what is the technology behind it. If you're making a website, of course, the first thing you want to ask yourself, not Google, let's just go to Wikipedia again. And of course, are you using a WordPress? If you can spell WordPress right. Right. Are you going to use a content management system, or are you going to program that website by hand? Are you going to use some kind of database connection? We all love and hate WordPress, don't we? Some of us love it. Some of us hate it. Some of us have a love and hate relationship with it. The advantage of WordPress is that, pretty much it's once you build it, it's simple to maintain. The downfall, though, of course, is that it has limitations somewhat. If you want to do anything special, you got to go in the code and change it and things like that. If I'm designing a website, this is one of the first questions I would be asking. Do you have a content management system that you're going to use? What are some of the other ones? Django or whatever it's called, right? Is it Django or something like that? And then there's another one. Let's see, other ones. There's a whole bunch of them out there. Of course, WordPress is the most popular one. What is it? Like 30% of the top 10 million websites are on WordPress. 6 million, 60 million. It's got good and bad things. The thing I don't like about it is I don't like the way it does mobile, because the responsive is kind of difficult for me, I guess. I don't know. So you should understand some of these back-end things. You should do some research of your own, just so that when you're talking to people, the words that you use are important. Take the web development class. How about that? Right? Take the web development 2 class. Yeah. Again, the challenge I had is that, whoever the agency was that was making the Zircon site, they thought desktop first, right?
or 80% of my users are mobile, so they didn't plan properly. You know,
That's not WordPress.
no, I understand that. But I'm just saying, now I'm faced with the challenge. How do I get mobile users to have a user experience when I'm stuck with a theme that's not mobile friendly? I understand. It's not WordPress's fault. I just struggle with mobile, is what I'm trying to say. And I think, hopefully, the goal here is that you have a good knowledge base. And the reason why I was telling you that technology, I remember I had no idea what Ajax was or JSON or any of that stuff, and I was at a wedding. My friend married a billionaire. Literally, not a millionaire, billionaire. And so I'm in Atherton, at a giant mansion. Right next door to Jerry Rice was the neighbor next door. Jerry Rice lived next door. That's when I've been to the house a couple times. I'm like, Jerry, can I have an autograph? No. He didn't give me an autograph. But and I'm sitting there. It was probably 2003. I think it was 2003 or 2000. Yeah, 2003. I think it was. And there were a bunch of Google people there because some of the people that the guy was getting married. Some of the people that worked at Google, and I remember sitting there, and the guys from Google were like, "We can't find enough people that know this JSON, or we don't have enough people that know what Ajax is, And they were struggling back then to find people that knew these technologies, and so on. So they've been around for a while. You should understand what some of them do and why people use them. Let's do a quick demo of Sketch today. Okay, so if you want to follow along, I'm just going to do random copy and pasting from the internet and things like that. So let me stop my video and we'll start a new one.
This was my